This is about engagement with Europe's regions, and perhaps it's the most difficult issue, the least well-defined, but from the conversations yesterday, that engagement is vitally important. And as I said earlier, if the investment in through the EIT instrument increases over the next number of years, everybody will pay attention and will ask questions about where is it going, what the benefit is to the local regions. And since Europe is run at the end of the day by representatives from every country, they will be asking questions about their own regions. So, and this is a tough proposition, I would say, because you're talking about culture, talking about communications, you're talking about new structures and very different types of structures. And I think what you're aiming at is what ideally you would like all the citizens of every state in the EU to be saying that the EIT is a wonderful instrument. And the question is, how do you get into the consciousness at that level? It involves the media as well. So to help us think about these final issues, we have, again, 4 speakers. One give the EU viewpoint, one the EIT viewpoint, one the private sector viewpoint, and then we'll have a national perspective as well. So can I start with Javier Prats-Monet? You spoke yesterday already, so you don't really need an introduction, but for those of you who weren't here yesterday, he's the Deputy Director General for Education and Culture at the European Commission. He represents the Commission on the governing board of the EIT. Now, he has responsibility for modernization of European education, an easy task, I'm sure, and has had several other portfolios in the Commission, including advisor on regional policy. He's Spanish, but you have studied in many countries, so you're a broad pan-European person. That's great. So you're very well placed, again, as well as being in the EU, to give us a view of how the regions and this central instrument can balance and interact with each other.
Thank you. Thank you, John. Let me start by saying that it's not because you study in many countries that you learn something. Good morning, or good afternoon, rather. Yes, this is I think, a challenging panel. What I would like to do is to say a few words about what the challenge is for this panel in particular, and then what approach we've taken in the Commission, at least, to address it, and then how we have tried to provide some answers through, essentially, the SIA, the Strategic Innovation Agenda. As for the nature of the challenge, actually, it's a very simple thing. There is a very clear, simple objective of the EIT. This is excellence. And this is the overriding concern that the EIT should have, because if the EIT is not about excellence and innovation, then what is it for? But at the same time, the EIT is there, and has to be there also, as a European institution. Therefore, it has to have a European character, and this means that Europeans, especially European citizens, not to mention public authorities and member states, have to perceive the EIT as doing something for Europe. So the challenge is indeed to make sure that we have an institution and KICs that work for excellence and at the same time are beneficial to all. This is indeed the challenge, and this is the first thing to look at. But the second challenge is that, of course, whatever you want to do, you have to have critical mass. And the EIT will never have the critical mass to address the issues of regional disparities that are inherent to the European project. Suppose that the EIT got as much funding as the Commission and the SIA propose. That's about 3 billion euro. That is about 1% of the structural funds as they are today for the 7 years. So the impact of the EIT, and of course it has to have impact, because if we don't have impact, then we are just another well-meaning project. If the EIT has impact, it cannot be about volume, it can be about how it provides change in the way people, institutions work. And the third thing I wanted to mention is that today, the EIT is still in its initial phase. It started as a nice, ambitious experiment, no more than an experiment, no more than 3 KICs. It would be, of course, ridiculous to expect that 3 KICs, no matter how extended their activities are, and Lord knows they have been very extended, it cannot possibly cover all the regions or all the parts of Europe. So this, for the challenge, a few words about how we have approached this. Well, it's actually pretty simple, because for this aspect, regional engagement, the approach is the same as we have looked at the EIT and the KICs as a whole, and this is very simple. EIT is based on the idea that innovation is driven by people. So the KICs are essentially instruments to bring people together into a common strategic challenge towards a single objective. Bringing people together, but of course not just any people, people who, because of their different sectors, because of their different disciplines, or because of living in different cities, would not naturally meet or work together. And there comes the added value of the EIT as a whole, which is to provide, thanks to this unusual gathering of expertise and different backgrounds, to provide new ideas and therefore new business opportunities. What this means is that engagement, including engagement with regions, should not be just about territories. It has to be about impact, and the impact comes not just for spreading around the territory, but especially by making sure we find innovative ways of working and scale those ways up. So my third and last point, before the point is raised about the 3 minutes I got left, and still almost 40% of the total, the way we approach it, well, as you know, we have presented the strategic innovation agenda, and the agenda, what we've tried to do, first of all, is make sure that we have new proposals for key themes that are broad enough to make sure that it cover the possibilities and the added value of all regions of Europe. If you look at, for example, added value manufacturing, if you look at food for the future, it's obvious that the objective of these new KICs cover capacities, comparative advantages of all regions of Europe, not just a few. If you look, for example, at health, you will not manage anything in the field of health without a strong engagement of local authorities. So there is, first of all, a very clear consciousness that when we look at the new KICs, we had to propose KICs that met societal challenges, and these societal challenges, by definition, have to be European-wide. So the first guarantee is that we will have a proposal for new KICs that will enlarge the scope of what we have today. The second is a very strong emphasis and priority to outreach and dissemination. This you see in the Commission's proposal for the SIA, and as a matter of fact, not surprisingly, the Parliament has been very strong in stressing this particular point, because the Parliament represents, of course, the variety of interests, and we are now looking and discussing, although we don't have a conclusion yet, of something which will be called regional RIS, regional innovation schemes, which are a way to ensure that areas of excellence in different regions will have an easy contact with KICs and therefore benefit from it. The Commissioner proposed a fellowship scheme to make sure that this emphasis of innovation and the IT on the individual is taken up. And my last word would be that the key point to remember for the EIT, and I would say for the entire MFF, is that the Commission has started the MFF with a very simple idea. Let's make sure that although the budget of the EU in any area, including, of course, the EIT, will be a drop in the sea, let's make sure it is the right drop. And the way to make sure it is the right drop is to really take it as an element of, an objective of results and outcomes, not an objective of entitlement. This means very simply that engagement with region has to be for the EIT a two-way street. Just as the EIT and the KICs have to make a serious effort to see how they can disseminate and spread the excellence they produce to everybody, regions in Europe have to make sure that they have a real reflection on what is their value added, what do they bring to the table, and how can they benefit from what the EIT has to offer. Of course, this requires something very simple: clear rules of the game. Clear and transparent rules of the game as how engagement should happen. And this is the task that the board of the EIT will have to ensure when it establishes the criteria, the conditions, the rules for the next wave of KICs of the EIT. I think I've kept just within the time. Thank you.
You set a good example just before lunch. applaud you for that. But before we let you off the hook, I've been hearing a few maybe slightly different signals, so maybe you could just clarify for me. You say that two-way engagement is necessary, so you have to reach out, but they have to reach back as well. But at the same time, as I understand it, you would not plan to operate a regional policy, a regional policy of, or a policy of regional distribution, that you will invest wherever the excellence arises. I think that's as I understand what you're saying.
Maybe to put it in a simple way, a region cannot be excellent on everything. So it has to be indeed that EIT cannot and should not be an instrument of cohesion policy. We have cohesion policy for that. And actually, even cohesion policy must focus on outcomes and results, not on the distribution of an envelope that regions can take back home for 7 years. That cannot be the way to look at the next budget.
But Jetta, would it be a desirable target that all nations, maybe not just all regions, but all countries would be involved in the KICs?
That would be a desirable outcome if there are significant and interesting propositions, but it cannot be an end in itself. The purpose cannot be to have a KIC, a co-location center, spread evenly across all European regions because of it.
That's very clear. Okay, thank you for that clarification. Perhaps we come on to our next speaker. Jana Kolar is the founder of Morana RTD. This is a research company specializing in conservation. She's head of the Conservation and Preservation Department at the National and University Library of Slovenia, and was Director General of Science and Technology Directorate in the Slovenian Ministry of Higher Education. She is also a member of the EIT Governing Board. So I think she is well positioned, you are well positioned to address the issue of regional initiatives and how they can connect with the EIT as a central institution.
Thank you very much. Yeah, good morning. I'll also start by saying that this is a challenging impact on the regions, and cooperation with the regions is a very challenging topic. First of all, because so far not many regions are directly involved in EIT through the KICs. And a lot of regions do complain about that. So let me address some of the personal issues, some of the personal views on this. Now, first of all, during the last 2 days, you've probably heard that EIT and the KICs, well, it's a different kind of animal among the instruments in Europe. It is different in a lot of things. For example, it is quite innovative in the way that it has innovative funding model, where KICs need to compete for funding every year based on past achievement and business model. It is innovative in the way it brings together the triangle. It's innovative in the way that it's really based on the outputs and not on the efforts which are placed into it. Now, there's one particular point that is particularly close to me, and that is that it also acknowledges the fact that innovation basically is a very regional thing. We've heard already during the past 2 days that it happens, well, when you have a coffee or a beer. It is not always open innovation. It starts within regional communities, which also have a lot of trust. Entrepreneur is more likely to go to the university nearby than to, for example, send an email to TNO or Fraunhofer. So we need to acknowledge the fact that innovation is has a strong local component, and that's what EIT through KICs does. It brings collocations together and adds European aspect, acknowledging the fact that, well, no matter how good these innovation communities, regional communities are, they need the broader European aspect and added value, critical mass, and so on. So that's the particularly important topic, which also brings us to the topic that we are discussing right now. That's the impact on the regions. Now, of course, the impact on the regions, the most straightforward one, is you take part in the KICs. Now, of course, first of all, there's a very limited number of regions that take part in the KICs so far. And that's understandable because they have been around only for a few years, and there are only 3, the pilot ones, that are running so far. So I truly do hope that the number of regions participating will expand as we have more KICs. It's a similar situation as we had with the, for example, European Research Council at the beginning. I mean, even after many years, and many calls of ERC, there are still countries, not just regions, which don't have any recipient of the ERC funding. So I do hope that in the future, with the next calls, we will have many more regions from across Europe taking part in the new KICs. Now, I firmly believe that there is, well, regions, as we heard before, they're not excellent in everything, but there are regions, in every region you can find pockets of global excellence. And now there's a challenge for regional policymakers. Now, we can say, okay, we're not included, or we take a proactive approach in regions saying we recognize that we have pockets of excellence, and we should take care on regional level as policymakers that they will not be overlooked when the KICs are proposed. And I very much like the proactive approach, for example, of Ireland that was presented, or from Austria, where they are actually funding their pockets of excellence to prepare for the new KIC calls. So it's not only about saying, well, we are excellent, they should be included. Sometimes that just this kind of proactive approach helps. It doesn't guarantee that there will be KICs also in these countries, but of course it is increasing the chances. Now, this brings me to the final part, and that is what else is the impact of EIT and the KICs on Europe. And I think that I truly do hope that it will have a wider impact through its innovative approach. Now, in most of the regions, we do have similar initiatives, be it competence centers, centers of excellence, cluster initiatives, if they cover the triangle. And they can learn also on regional level. They can adapt some of the approaches used in KICs that will result in better outputs. Now, this again comes to the regional policymakers, which, especially at the time when the new framework, the new structural funds are discussed for the next 7 years, where we already know that they should focus on smart specialization, meaning that this kind of regional initiatives, centers of excellence, for example, or competence centers, will gain in importance. It's important that on regional level, they are, at this point, aligned with with the present KICs and the future KICs, because that will increase the chances of this kind of initiatives being more integrated and getting bigger benefits from the future KICs. Thank you.
Thank you, Jana. I think you're making good, strong statements there. The question I would have is from the regions. Would you say all regions are interested? Or are there some regions who are not interested on principle?
I think all the regions, if they know EIT, well, the ones that know about the initiative are quite interested. And we can see that also, for example, when there are discussions in the parliament and at the council, because they do want to take part in these initiatives. But there's, of course, a lot that we can do about that to increase the chances. So that's the...
And communication, I guess, is the key, isn't it?
Of course.
Yeah. Always difficult. Okay, thank you for that clarification. This one for our third panelist, Aled Thomas. You have worked for 15 years on European regional development in the UK and Brussels, both. You were a member of the Regional Development Agency from the West Midlands in the UK, in Birmingham, UK. And there you participated in the development of the application of the climate cake to the EIT. So I think you combine the maybe a regional perspective with being involved in the KIC. Maybe you can give us, both perspectives and how they connect.
Thank you, John. I'll certainly try. And thanks for the opportunity to be here to present at the conference. I've got 3 slides, basically, to try and explain how we developed the regional concept within Climate Cake and how we've tried to implement that concept over the last few years. So I'll try and address 3 basic questions. Why are the regions involved in Climate Cake? How are we organised? And what are we doing? So 3 quite basic questions. But before that, I should perhaps say is that the regions are a fully integrated part of Climate Cake. So in terms of the management structure and the activities, the regions are a full part of Climate Cake and have been part of the KIC from the original application to the EIT. So from a very early stage, there was a recognition that regions could bring added value, strengths, could really upscale the impact of the Climate KIC right from the start. So this is not about trying to reach out to a new series of regions. They're actually built within the KIC structure. So I suppose the question is, why regions? Why involve regions? And I suppose one key thing to say at the start is this is Climate KIC, so the focus is very much on climate. And quite clearly, regions and cities have a key role to play in terms of supporting the transition to a low-carbon economy. So I think for those of you who are looking at new KICs and are looking at different themes, I'm not saying this concept is the same for all activity. What I would say is, in terms of climate issues, the RIC concept is very much at the heart of what the KIC is doing. Because if you look at some of the UN stats, 60 to 80% of global action to reduce greenhouse gas emissions happen at subnational level. Regions and cities have key roles in terms of the systems, so the transitions we need in terms of the built environment, energy systems, mobility schemes, waste management. These are all key responsibilities which regions and cities have, not just within Europe, but across the world. And I think this was recognised in the EIT Conference report by Technopolis last year. So that's climate. I mean, it's clearly cities and regions are at the heart of this debate. And I think we're talking also about a new model of innovation where, again, regions and cities play a key central role. So we're looking at innovation which is systemic. Yes, we should be looking at how we develop new technologies, new solutions, but we also have to think about how we then accelerate the take-up of those solutions within our wider social and economic systems. We're looking at a challenge-led approach. Within Climate KIC, we've got specific platforms on key areas of challenge. So again, we're not just looking at the development of new technologies, we're looking at how we diffuse existing technologies as well to address particular challenges. So we're really looking at a much broader model of innovation, which includes social and technological change, and I think that's where regions and cities have a key role to play. We're also looking at developing sort of practice-based professional development. So we've heard a lot over the last sort of 24 hours about the development of students and entrepreneurs. That's great, but we also need to go beyond that and involve a lot of the people who are already in companies, professional people, so involving a much broader range of people. And of course, this all comes together into what we call in Climate Kick making transitions happen. So within the push within Europe to support this transition to a low-carbon economy, what are the key elements in making that process work? Just in terms of Climate Kick, how we're organised, I suppose if you ask me what our mission is, it's really to play a leading role in the transformation of European regional innovation policy and practice on climate change. We've got 6 major regions involved in Climate Kick. They're listed there. Big industrial regions with a track record of strong collaboration between businesses, universities, regional city governments, so building on an existing infrastructure, but also crucially, key commitments to reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So cities and regions with clear policy frameworks in place, but also, again, linked to this wider discussion about engaging regions, deliberately focused on different parts of Europe. So Western Europe, Southern Europe, Eastern Europe covered, not completely, but at least having hubs in those areas. I've mentioned the actors involved, so we've got about 70 partners within Climate Kick, which reach across the 6 regions. Again, trying to bring together the innovation pyramid. And a key point, obviously, is resources. The reality is regions or cities are investing millions, billions across Europe in low-carbon innovation already. So how do we actually influence how that money is allocated? And I think, as Xavier mentioned earlier, in terms of, well, Anjana, looking to the future, EU structural funds will be a huge financial instrument across all of Europe in the next 7 years. A key, if you like, stimulus in this sort of time of austerity. And I think it was Lambert van Nistelrooy, the MEP, yesterday, who talked about this shift in regional policy across Europe, increasingly away from hard infrastructure towards softer infrastructure, the development of people, innovation, entrepreneurship. That process is happening. It'll be a key issue in the next round of structural fund programs. The issue for us as the KIC is how do we shape, if you like, a regional framework of innovation on low carbon. Just on that, the Commission is interestingly saying, yes, regions, you need to work out your smart specialisation, exactly where your strengths are, and to focus on those. But they're also saying all regions across Europe have to spend a minimum percentage of their funding on 3 key areas: innovation, development of companies, and the transition to a low-carbon economy. So I really think we need a clear framework on how to take that forward within Europe, because I think politically there's going to be a lot of pressure on funding individual projects around renewable energy. I think we need a far clearer framework around linking low-carbon and innovation. So just the last slide, I think my time is almost up. So just some examples as to how we're developing this framework within Climate Kick. We've got some large projects, transition cities, looking at clustering projects, demonstrators. We've got a project around industrial symbiosis. How do you develop regional markets for waste and resources? Professional development program, Pioneers into Practice, which allows people from different organisations and different sectors to come together and learn within one programme. So really breaking down barriers between sectors. I think I better stop there. There's maybe just on the last point, this question of how we disseminate information and share knowledge and impact across Europe. I think it's extremely difficult for the KICs to have a physical presence in all parts of Europe. I think we need to think laterally as to how we share information, disseminate information, build bridges, and I think a key part of that is there's a lot of organisations already set up in Europe to do that task, so it's how we work with some of those organisations, people like ERIN, Eurocities. Final point, we've got our Innovation Festival in Wrocław in Poland in October, so again, that's a way for us to take some of what the KIC's doing to a new audience. Thank you.
Thank you, Aled, for that. From your presentation, you're clearly embarked on a kind of significant program. Can I ask you one thing? Yada said that innovation is local. I think you were saying that the key to climate change, climate control and so on, is also local. And you have many regions involved. How difficult was it to get the regions involved? You know, were they fully convinced to start with, and it was an easy sell?
Just on the first point, then, the role of regions, I think that's becoming increasingly clear, particularly on low carbon innovation. And let's not go into the discussion about the emissions trading scheme in Europe, but clearly some of the larger market-based instruments are not so effective, and I think there's an increasing consensus that a lot of the solutions, a lot of the innovations are happening at a local level. In terms of the engagement in regions, I think that's an interesting question. I mean, I remember being at an EIT conference for the first round of calls for the KICs, and I remember sitting in a very similar audience to this, and I would have said 70 to 80% of the audience would have been from an academic background, and I felt it's quite an interesting being in that kind of environment, and the feeling that maybe the regions are not natural parts of the innovation process. But I think, as I say, particularly around issues such as climate, there are other societal challenges where you clearly need the input of regions and governments. And I think increasingly, being part of the KIC has brought the regions and cities to a more central part within the innovation process. Okay. It hasn't been easy, but it's happening.
Well, thank you for that comment. We want to the last panelist, Manuel Perez Alonso. He's chair of the Spanish Entrepreneurial Scientists Association, which was recently established, seemingly with a lot of enthusiasm. So well done on that. So I think you're going to tell us about that national initiative and how it might connecting with the broader European instrument, the EIT, the KICs, and so on. Well, there's a two-way connection between the two. And you have 7 minutes.
Thank you, John, for the presentation, and thank you to the organizers for this invitation to visit this beautiful city of Dublin. I'm 50 years old, and I started my research career when I finished my graduation. That was almost 30 years ago. And since then, when I was engaged in research, in academic research, I work at the University of Valencia as an assistant professor in genetics. That is my job. So I was worried about or concerned about the gap between the knowledge that we generate and where it ends. So to me, this cycle of writing up projects and then after several years of research, writing up papers and scientific publications, as the end of the story was not satisfying, and that is why I was interested in knowledge transfer and entrepreneurship. So my first company, it was created 15 years ago, and now my career as an entrepreneur is being founding partner of 6 biomedical companies. The most representative ones are 2 of them related to medical genetics, and another one is a drug discovery company, and another one is a bioinformatics company. Okay, these 6 companies employ now more than 100 people, highly qualified people, and the revenues, the annual revenues of them is 7 million euro. So I had the idea that this experience could be shared with other scientists or entrepreneurs who could be interested in starting a company. That is why a few years ago I decided to start this network, which is the Spanish network of entrepreneurs in science. It is done under LinkedIn, that now includes more than 1,800 members. Discussions in this forum and this network led to the idea that we could organize a National Congress of Entrepreneurs in Science, and that took place recently, at the end of last year. So in November, we had this Congress, which is, the website is in Spanish, although we have a small part in English, so if you are interested to follow the videos and photos of what was going on there. So it was a very positive experience, and then during this Congress, where we can see the main figures, so we had more than 350 attendees, many of them young scientists. We had 80 companies presenting all their experience, and we could realize of the very high potential that we have of good science that is not always translated into companies. So, but what I would like to bring you here is what happened is that we decided to create the Spanish Association of Entrepreneurs in Science. Okay, this association has a main task, which is promoting entrepreneurship in science and technology, and of course to transfer knowledge and technology and get investment in science-based companies. But a very important point that I would like to stress, it is something that has been discussed previously, is that we should take care of entrepreneurs in science. So these people are taking risks, and many of us do not know the risk that we are approaching when we are starting a company and when we are, for example, negotiating with investors and shareholders. That is something important to take in consideration. And now the idea that I'm bringing now is that we would like to make a map of similar initiatives all over Europe, and we bring the idea that we could consider a kind of bottom-up proposal that we would need a European association that we could say that it is needed. So my main idea when I come here is to bring who of you may be interested in joining efforts to make a European association of this kind. Thank you very much.
So do you see a role for this, for the EIT in this, or do you see a proposal emerging?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, that's pretty straight. Okay, it's over to you for the next few minutes. We're going to close in about 10, 15 minutes. Do you want to raise any issue on this present regions? Particularly interested to hear from people who represent regions if they are here. But we'll start over here.
Hello.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Go ahead. Paul Gorge from the University College Cork. Question for Alet. It's not a question about regions, but it's a question about one of the I guess the tasks for the RICS, which is a practice-based professional development. I just wonder, Alet, if you could give us some examples of what that entails, maybe some tangible examples of how that's actually happened within the RICS.
Yeah, sure. So our main program in that area is called Pioneers to Practice. It's something we started developing within the KICs since 2010. What it tries to do is, within each region, we've clearly got a range of experiments going on to do with the transition to low-carbon economy. So things like how we retrofit buildings, low-carbon mobility schemes, low-energy schemes. And what we try and do is to provide those schemes as if you like, a placement for a range of people who are interested to develop skills, learning, some entrepreneurs, some who are going to be more sort of innovation enablers to develop their understanding of how low-carbon innovation works in practice. So we try and bring together people not just who are students or maybe from a company. We also make the programme available to people who are from regional or city governments. And what we try and do is get them to not just to be part of the programme, but actually when they're doing their practical placements to actually move between sectors. So somebody from an SME can go into a public authority for a month to really understand some of the barriers around maybe policy, regulation, and in a similar way somebody from a SME can go into university. Or so it's a programme which really tries to break down some of the barriers between sectors. And the programme also involves an element of mobility within Europe, so people get to move from their own region and understanding of challenges within their own region to understanding how that works in a different part of Europe.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, let's take a few questions starting over here, and there's one here.
Thank you. Gary Logan from Biz in the UK. Another question for Ahmed. As the KICs budgets increase and the activities increase, do you foresee any scope for increase in the number of RICs? You've got 6 at the moment. Or do you feel that you've got an optimum number to be able to finance the innovations coming out of the co-location centres?
Okay,
it's actually a related question for the EIT board members. I can see how with the opportunity of new KICs, that there's an opportunity for new regions, new co-location centres to become involved. But do you envisage that there will be in the future a mechanism for existing KICs to add co-location centres?
Okay, anybody else want to bring the question before I go?
Agustín Fons from Trinity, Spain. What is the opinion of the governing members of the KIC and the Commission about what we call virtual collocation center, which is a figure that groups a lot of institutional partners and that call themselves a collocation center, but what's maybe very broad in the geography of
Maybe those three say, can the RICs increase? Can the size of the existing KICs increase? So would like to comment on that. Perhaps that's
maybe I've just
policy issue as well.
If we just start on the RIC issue, I very much agree. I think with what Jana was saying earlier. I mean, this issue of regional involvement, development of a regional network is something which it's a responsibility of the KICs. You know, it's a key part of developing the strategy and the partnership of each KIC. So I think it's really up to the KICs to decide how to develop that. At the moment, I think we're within Climate KIC specifically in a sort of time of sort of consolidation. So we don't have any immediate proposals to enhance the number of regions, but we're quite interested, I think, in some of the proposals from the European Parliament in terms of the regional innovation scheme, and that being a sort of a more managed way of maybe enlarging the number of regions, or at least starting to develop particular linkages with new regions.
And in terms of new KICs, is there scope for
thank you for that question.
Well,
of course, the existing KICs are expanding. And it's not really a question for the board members, but for the KICs, because it's their autonomous decision how to do that.
Yeah, I think this is really a very important point. The entire philosophy of the EIT, and I think the entire other variant originality, is that the KICs function as legal entities that are partnerships with their own strategy and freedom to develop them. Actually, they're doing it in very different ways today, even the 3 we have now. So, and this is important to preserve. So it's not about a top-down organization of how we should. Can I say a few words about this issue of the virtual collocation center? I think that, the simple answer to this is that, on-site presence and physical presence is an important value of a collocation center. But I think we should also consider first that the difference between on-site and online is something of an older generation like mine. If I look at the way my daughter sees life, that distinction is very blurred. This is why, for example, in many universities who offer physical presence courses, that are also recorded. Most students stop showing up in the courses because they prefer listening to the course when it's best for their time management. So the point I try to make is that we are looking at perhaps a way in which education and innovation will evolve that we don't foresee now. But this brings me to, if I may, one, I think, very important element of how there can be regional engagement that is not linked to the presence of regional authorities. And this is what was discussed in the previous session about MOOCs and the impact of technology and what KICs can do about it. To give an example, I mean, the impact of MOOCs, we still haven't seen anything yet. And they are 2 years old, and as you know, MIT had in its first MOOC more students than its 150 years of history. And that in itself should be a wake-up call for us. But more importantly, the conjunction between MOOCs and big data, we have an extraordinary impact in the way people teach and learn, and in business models of higher education institutions. Now, what does this mean for the EIT? Well, certainly the ICT Labs KIC can come up with very innovative and interesting ways of using digital learning. Secondly, the 3 KICs together can think of interesting ways in which they can use their diversity and apply it online. And certainly the EIT Institute can stimulate and give an incentive for the KICs to have something on digital education together. And that is something that certainly can be exploited by many regions where higher education institutions want to increase their efficiency, want to change their back offices, want to use in a better way online education. So you can see many ways in which the EIT can focus on excellence, can have cooperation within a KIC, between KICs, with the EIT, and then spread it around. And this, I think, is more of a promise than trying to look at what is the actual geographical distribution of collocation centers, which is admittedly also something we should improve.
Good. I think you're right to say that the MOOCs are not yet proven. Because it's probably the biggest experiment going on at the moment. The dropout rate is quite high for most courses. Yes. And you do express the physical togetherness is also very important. That's where stimulation occurs.
Let's say that, if I may say so, just to be provocative, higher education institutions are extremely prone to change and innovation, sometimes as long as it's not about changing themselves. And I think that applies to most of human beings. But I would have thought that one should not underestimate that this time is different. And the impact that the conjunction between technology and the capacity to manage big amounts of information will have on the way people teach and learn. I have really no doubts about that. It's just that we don't know the direction it can change, but it will be important.
That's what makes it exciting. Okay, anybody else want to come in the stage? See any other hands, or are we pretty jaded at this point and really ready for the close? I think we probably are. And so let me just wrap up very briefly, drawing some threads from what you were presented and from the interventions by the audience. I heard excellence coming across loudly, but how to combine that with providing benefit to all citizens? That combination is important, and that entitlement is no sense. There can be no entitlement to any of this across Europe, and that hence the importance of specialization at regions. And as I understand it, all regions will develop these smart specialization strategies. All regions, all countries. So I think that's an instrument which you can work to as well, it seems to me. And the other thing I heard coming across was, even though we live in a highly globalized world, most things are still local. The solution to many things are still local. We heard about innovation is a local phenomenon. The solution to climate rests locally as well. So I suppose the advice to people thinking about organizing new proposals for KICs is to think of the local strengths as well as thinking local, because many of the solutions, many of the strengths may be right at your door. Would that be fair? I would like to thank all the 4 speakers.